Well, the Boise State football team says bye this week, but it's time to say hello once again here on Jay and Dave's Sports Bar. It is a bye week for the Boise State football team, and we celebrate these here.
Yeah, we really do. This is like, you and I talked this morning before recording the podcast, and you called me, it was like 11, and I could tell you were like at home. Yep. You were throwing the ball with the dog, and I was just sitting there working, like catching up on like HBO shows, watching a little bit of Succession, and you're just like, isn't it great that it's 11 a.m. and we don't have to be anywhere?
Yeah.
So
well, usually
nice.
By the time we record this podcast every Wednesday right around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I got to work a little while ago. Normally this is like hour 6 for us, I would say, on a normal work week.
I mean, if you're down in practice at like 9:30, so.
And the news at 10 goes off at 10, so they're usually just long work days. You spend a lot of time here.
And it's like, well, there's a debate if it's actually a bye week or an open date. But for us, it really does feel like it. So we love it. And you got to catch up on stuff.
We need to coin like a whole new phrase, like bye week, open date, nothing like that. Like we need to come up with something cool that like truly encompasses what it means. Like I don't know.
It's catch up.
Sleep
it's catch up week.
Only work 40 hours.
No, it is. It's total catch up, man.
Yeah. The Boise State football team's feeling good. We'll talk about the Air Force game and how that went. It was a huge victory for the Boise State football team. But I tell you, the Broncos and, for that matter, UCF kind of began this week with a bang, announcing a home-and-home series that will kick off in 2021 and conclude in 2023. And this is what college football wants. I think more so than just people in Orlando and people in Boise. I think people in college football want to see this game.
Yeah, 100%. And I think one of the comments I got after I published it was like, well, don't just call this a great group of 5 matchup. It's a great college football matchup. Well, in like the second paragraph, I talked about how good the teams were. So
easy, Turbo.
It's a little, take a big shock what he was a fan of.
Yeah.
UCF.
Okay.
So, but I think it's fantastic. I really do. Like, just the fact that these two teams have tried to fight for respect, for attention, for what have you. They've done it in a little bit different ways, and they're always compared to one another relentlessly. How they schedule, how they do against similar opponents, how they've been able to maintain success, things like that. They've all been compared to each other. And so because these two programs right now, as we stand, even with UCF losing to Pitt, they're top 25. These are only 2 top 25 teams in the group of 5. And if they can, sustain the success, and I think it's a little bit of a question with UCF, maybe not so with Boise State, and they're playing in 2 years. So I think that, this thing is going to be legit. It's going to be awesome. It's what people have wanted to see. These two actually settle it on the field a little bit instead of always bickering at one another about who is more deserving of something.
Well, it's the fan bases that are bickering at each other, right?
Yeah, it's true.
A little bit the schools, the national championship that UCF claims.
And the Power 6 thing with the Mountain West, not liking the AAC doing it. There's a little bit of that. And you're right, but not necessarily the schools. I think that for all intents and purposes, if UCF, ran the table and say they got a shot at the playoff, but whatever. I'm sure Boise State was like, yeah, go for it. Do that for us. This is me talking like Boise State.
These schools can help each other out.
Yeah, like Boise State was like, well, that's what we tried to do and came that close, but couldn't. But if UCF could, I'm sure Boise State would be like, hey, part of it would be like, you're welcome. And B, it would be like, good, someone can do it. That bodes well for us too. That's from their perspective.
Well,
but
the best thing about this too is they are kind of creating. I mean, there's going to be other group of 5 teams that compete between now and 2023. But right now, I think few would argue that UCF and Boise State are at the top of the group of 5. And the reason why I believe their success is sustainable is so much is centered around the play of your quarterbacks. And right now they're both starting true freshman quarterbacks that will be there for that first matchup in 2021. I also think that, teams outside of the teams in the group of 5 are less volatile than teams in the Power 5. I mean, I think Boise State deserves credit for the success that they've had over the last 2 decades, but I think they've kind of shown that you can separate yourself for a while, and UCF has only been doing it for a few years now, but you look at their program, you look at their athletes, you look at their recruiting base, I don't think they're going anywhere, but but up.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So that they are kind of creating a de facto group of 5 championship.
Yes.
I mean, I really do think that's kind of what this is. And that way, when we get to the end of the year, either school is going to point at the other one saying like, no, we beat a great team, or, it's going to give them more credibility, strength of schedule, and it also is kind of a de facto Group of 5 champion, where at the end of the year, we kind of know which one of those programs is going to move on.
I had a question in the mailbag I did last week where I had heard whispers that this series was happening. I couldn't confirm when, so never reported it, never wanted to, speculate too much. But one of the questions I asked was if Boise State and UCF both went undefeated, would they maybe get paired up in a New Year's Six bowl? And I almost wanted to answer it and be like, and if they don't, maybe you'll see them play sooner than later. But it was like, what would the point have been to that? Yeah. But I think that's 100% right. You talk about the strength of schedule thing. UCF wants the home and homes with the Power Fives. They haven't scheduled one since February of 2018. The last one they did was with North Carolina. That's the last time they've been able to successfully do one, right? Wow. And they've been in the news a lot about not wanting to do 2-for-1s, not wanting to deal with neutral sites and all that stuff. If you look at their future schedules, they are not nearly as booked as Boise State. Boise State is booked, I think, with the exception of 24. They're completely booked through 2027.
And even like the next decade, though, there are very few open dates. And even to make this happen, they had to move a couple of games or the dates of a couple of games just to make sure they could play UCF. And, we talked with the director of athletics, Kurt Apsey, the other day about this. And I used the word or the term sense of urgency when asking how important it was to not just play this game, but play it in somewhat the near future. And he said that he wouldn't go that far. But, man, I don't know how you can't say there wasn't a sense of urgency to make this thing happen. They moved football games so they could make this game happen just about as soon as it possibly could happen.
Yep. I mean, there are guys on these teams right now who will play in both games.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like
George Halani, Hank Bachman,
right. Well, they'll play
Shakir.
They'll play in that 21 game, but in both.
Gotcha.
There's some guys that are like redshirting right now, or like guys that are committed, you can say. But there are even guys right now on those rosters who are practicing who will be able to play in both. Usually when these schedules come out so far in the future, it's like the Florida State one was 6 years in advance. Just that series. So when it came out, I felt like that was going to be forever in the future. This one feels way closer. And I think that adds a little bit more of an excitement to it. The fact that, like, what people don't think UCF's sustainable, well, the closer that game is, maybe perhaps the better. You just don't know. But
I remember when the Michigan State date was announced for 2023. And I remember being like, yeah, if we ever even get to 2023.
You're like, I'm going to take my flying car there. So.
That's how far it felt in advance. But I really do think that there was a sense of urgency to get this thing scheduled and for it to happen in the near future so that the sheen on both these programs would not wear off, and it would put them in a position to truly, decide who is the better program while both programs are at their peak or near their peak.
And I think it's a unique difference in scheduling philosophy, a little bit like I said with Boise State and UCF. UCF not having many of those enables them some flexibility to get those games sooner than later. Not that they think that they can't sustain their success, but I think on the other hand, on the flip side, for Boise State, like UCF's trying to strike while the iron's hot. Yeah. Boise State, I think, is confident it will still be good in 2027. You know what I mean?
And there's no reason for them not to be. I mean, they've been doing it for 20 years now. So, yeah. Is there any other opponents on the schedule that you received some feedback from fans about? Because I know one for me, and it was, for whatever reason, man, it seems like there are some fans out there that are not happy with continuing to play Oregon State. And I don't know why that would be the case. I think they say that Oregon State's like a bottom feeder in the Pac-12, and why would you want to continue to schedule them? But I think for me, the reason why you do something like that is, hey, I don't care who you play in the Pac-12. It's going to be bragging rights at some point in time. I mean, it's not like San Diego State's beating a ton of really good teams out of the Pac-12, and they're tweeting out that they're 5-1 against the conference. Another thing is that there's going to be a day where realignment does pop up again eventually. I'm not saying it's next year. I'm not saying it's in 5 years. I'm not saying it's in 10 years. But eventually it's going to happen. And if you can continue to prove that you can beat some of the average to below average teams in the conference, then you will eliminate the argument one day that, oh, yeah, but once you get into our league, you're not going to be any good year in and year out. No, if you schedule a Pac-12 team, I don't care how good they are, and you beat them every year, you're going to be able to be like, no, we'll be fine. We take care of them every few years, so we'll be good.
Do you know why you mentioned that argument? And I hate that argument close to more than any other. Other than the fact that some people are like, why isn't Boise State in the Pac-12? They can't just
join it.
They have to be invited. It's like when and you'll see it a lot, usually from some rando who doesn't follow Group of Five, or if they do, they're from somewhere else.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, they couldn't sustain the success if they're in the Pac-12. How the hell do you know that?
Yeah.
They don't have, if they're in the Pac-12, guess how much more money they'd be getting
exactly
to get the facilities, to be able to recruit people, to get what have you. You can't make that argument. It's impossible. And if you just want to talk about purely competition, what we've seen so far, hell yeah, they could compete in it. They wouldn't win it. I don't think they'd win it, but they would absolutely be like a
this year they might be able to contend.
Yeah. Well, do you want to talk about your team, or is that what we're doing now? Talking about the Pac-12, buddy?
Arguably the worst game I've ever watched. I don't know, that's probably going overboard. The 2002 Apple Cup will always cut pretty deep.
Didn't Washington State also have that game against Jared Goff where their quarterback threw for like 8 touchdowns and lost?
We threw for 8 touchdowns and lost?
Yeah, I thought he did a couple years ago.
Gardner set the record, and he had 7 touchdowns last year, and he didn't lose that game.
Okay, so maybe
it might have been. It might have been 6.
Okay.
Yeah.
But still.
But
you guys had like 600, 700 yards and lost.
Unreal. It was seriously unreal, and I gotta say, like, when I was watching it, I was playing this too much, like almost like a video game, and Washington State's up 49-17, and then I'm like, well, dang it, man, because Anthony Gordon, he just tied the record, and now we're up by so much. Like, I don't know if he's going to get a chance to add to it. Like, we don't really run out the clock too much, but still, like, it's not like we'd be attacking in our normal fashion. And so I was like, dang, man, I think he could get to like 9 or 10 if he just continued this current pace. And then UCLA scored, and I'm like, okay, so that's not bad. So now we get another one, and UCLA scored again. You're like, okay, well. Now you can get a couple more, and then it scored again. You're like, okay, this. I don't even care about the touchdown record anymore. Like, this is getting out of hand. And not Boise State. Washington State blew a 32-point third quarter lead. They were up by about 32. No, they were up by 32 with about 5 minutes to go in the third quarter, and they lost the game.
They gave up 50 points in 19 minutes.
I've never seen anything like it.
That's incredible.
And I've had so many people come up to me and be like, how did it happen? What happened? Like, I went to bed.
Yeah.
This was a free Saturday for us. Yeah. Not only are we on a bye right now, but Boise State played on a Friday against Air Force. Again, we're going to get to that in a moment.
It was a glorious Saturday.
It was an awesome Saturday. Well, I don't know about it started off good because I was just like watching football and consuming football like most college football fans. And then I was like, okay, the cherry on the top at the end of this thing, and the game I care about is going to be Washington State and UCLA. They've looked terrible. I mean, oh gosh, I saw them play Cincinnati in the season opener, and we were getting ready to cover that game down in Tallahassee. And Dorian Thompson, oh gosh, he's got a hyphenated last name. Whatever.
Isn't it DTR? Yeah, Thompson Robinson.
Yeah, Thompson Robinson. I was gonna say Wright
Thompson, then I was like, wait, no, it's the writer.
He was like 8 of 26 against Cincinnati. Yeah. I'm like, okay, well, this is going to be another victory for us. It'll be nice to watch this game. We get up 49-17, and everything's playing out as planned. And then it couldn't have gone worse from there. And when I talk about like people asking what happened, like, it was the perfect storm. Washington State would get the ball, they'd throw to a receiver, and the receiver would fumble the ball, and then it wouldn't be like UCLA would go on a 9-play drive.
Maybe 2 plays.
It would be like 1 or 2, and just dropping bombs.
Yeah. Maybe that was, because everyone was wondering if Chip Kelly could actually bring it back to college. Mm-hmm. And what he used to do at Oregon now is like what a lot of people do.
Yeah.
Maybe it's working again. I don't know.
Maybe it woke up. He woke up the quarterback.
I was chalking that up for a conference win for the alma mater. Now I'm like, oh God.
Yeah.
At least mine won.
At least they did.
Ranked road win.
Mm-hmm.
For the first time since my junior year of college.
Really?
2002.
2016?
What? No,
junior year of college?
No, they didn't win two road ranked games. They beat Stanford that year, and they were barely outside the top 25.
I was just trying to not.
No, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. It was actually at UCLA 2002.
Okay, and that's back when UCLA had a rule. And I remember when UCLA would come to town when I was in college, or I should say when we were in college. I went to Washington State. You went to Colorado. But man, those guys got off the bus.
Yeah.
And they were massive.
Yeah.
Huge.
Yeah.
And they had a huge competitive advantage back then. I think I thought that everything had swung in our favor this year and the last couple of years. Not the case. That was a big win. I will say this though, like even after Arizona State went on the road and won in East Lansing against Michigan State, I feel like there was a lot of confidence around Colorado to go in and get the job done.
Yeah, the line was around 8.
Was it that high?
I know it was. My wife was in Vegas. She put down money on them.
Nice.
And I
good bet, Lisa.
Yeah. I told her not to do the money line because I was like, I'm not that confident. But I mean, and it's crazy to think that if they hadn't, got an extra point blocked with a minute left, they probably would have beat Air Force and they'd be 4-0.
Wow.
Which is weird to think. So at least expectations are tempered just a little bit.
At least they don't have a conference loss.
And they didn't have their 2 best players.
Yeah.
Chenault was hurt. Mustafa Johnson was hurt. I don't know. I'm just saying. I'm excited. I'm cautiously optimistic.
Well,
but there you go.
There's your Pac-12 football fix.
Well, I was just going to say, those sorts of teams, Boise State absolutely could compete with those.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the Oregon States and stuff. I don't have an issue with that. Who knows? I mean, again, who knows how they're going to do? Yeah, usually they're not consistently among the best. But when they came here in 2006, when they came in here,
a couple years later,
when there was game day, when there was game day, they were pretty good.
They were ranked they were top 25.
Right. So, I mean, they've occasionally had pretty good teams, and I guarantee you, on both sides, they recruit against each other quite a bit. You know what I mean? And so I think I don't know.
Yeah.
Another thing, it has to be regional a lot of times for Boise State because we're so far out there.
Right. And that's what I mean. Like, it's nice not to have to go to Florida every year. You know. You're right. There is common ground when it comes to the recruiting battle up here, and so the fact that you can have bragging rights in this area is a big thing. I mean, I don't think Boise State has any guys out of Oregon this year, but they grabbed one out of Washington, Ezra Cleveland's old high school. Right. So I mean, there definitely is a competition.
There's guys like John.
When it comes to recruiting,
John Bates was an Oregon State commit.
Yep.
Actually, I think what was that time? Stoney was, and so was Jake Knight.
Yep.
They had a time when they had 3 tight ends who were all committed to Oregon State at some point.
Yep.
So they've obviously had some competition. I think like I said with the regional thing, Washington's not currently there, but they've had series with Washington. Washington State obviously they have had and will have.
Yep.
BYU, if we want to include them, Oregon State, that all makes sense because it's regional. We're isolated where we are, and I know there is like a national brand thing, but the further you get away from here, the harder it is to try to convince someone to do a home and home. That's why the Florida State one. I asked some Boise State people last week, it's still on, and if they want to back out, it's $2 million. But like some of those were interesting, but it's harder. It's going to be harder the further and further out you go to get those.
We're at the point in the Florida State contract where Boise State wins either way. Either Florida State comes here and plays them, or they pay them.
Yep.
And $2 million, and then Boise State could replace them with another home team. Granted, it wouldn't be that good. Ooh, here's your perfect. I mean, if they cancel, you know what your perfect storm is?
A team from Moscow.
Yeah. Game would sell out.
Oh yeah.
The game would sell out.
Yeah.
I don't care what they're doing. They had a huge victory, by the way, this last week.
Yeah.
Again, we're going to talk about the Vandals knocking off 11th ranked Eastern here in a little bit. But you get a $2 million payout from Florida State for canceling, and you get to schedule Idaho. And I know that Boise State fans right now are probably just cringing at any of this conversation.
Yeah. They're like, what would we rather have, Florida State?
Yeah. Well, that's why I'm saying it is a win-win at this point, because either you're getting $2 million and you get to fill another home date on your schedule, or you get to host Florida State. Yep. And so it might not feel like a win, but it is for the program. It's a win-win either way right now.
Yeah, and I think with the UCF thing, the schedule, including Florida State, obviously next year coming here. I mean, I don't know how many people can really complain about the schedule. If you're complaining about which Pac-12 team you're playing, you're doing things fairly well.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my stance on it. And and even though they haven't added, a Pac, Power 5 one, the most recent one was a 2-for-1 with Oregon, which still that third game is going to get Boise State 800,000. I think that's still a good one too. And so.
I was just to wrap this really back around to the UCF Boise State matchup. I think that everybody wants to know now, what's College Game Day going to do that weekend?
Right.
And we are so far out, but I did kind of go through it this morning, and it's a very short list of games you would think about. But Penn State at Wisconsin, LSU at UCLA if Chip Kelly continues to get the Bruins better, and Ohio State at Minnesota if those golfers ever keep rowing the boat together.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
With PJ Fleck up there. But I mean, those are I think those are going to be games that would be of interest. I know like Bama has a big game, but that's a neutral site game. The one thing that I will think that helps Boise State and UCF is the fact that these will be on college campuses.
Yes.
And College game day, they will go to a neutral site, but I just feel like the game day experience is about being on a college campus.
Yeah.
I think this one is going to have so much national buzz, so much national attention, and it will be at the top of the list of games that college game day will have to consider. Maybe not just in 2021, but depending on how that game goes, wrap it back around again here in Boise in 2023. We'll see.
Yeah, and you know what? I don't want to say sadly, but I think what would be most advantageous is like hypothetically that 2021 game was the second week of the season, because sometimes they think, oh, for the first game, what do they want to do for college game day? Usually it's the biggest one.
Yep.
And who knows?
The whole summer to prepare and do stuff.
And if UCF doesn't have a good 2020, but also you think about it, if eventually Mackenzie Milton comes back for them, they have Dylan Gabriel, like I don't see any reason that they shouldn't be good. And so I think it'd be awesome. You mentioned the Ohio State Minnesota one. The first thing I thought of was like, that's right around state fair time. That's a huge deal in Minnesota, but that's not on campus. So I don't know.
It's still something that they could probably play off of.
Yeah, but I think it's. I mean, it'd be really cool. It's a great idea, and I don't know. I love it. I think UCF hasn't been able to maintain the success that Boise State's had, but even in the past, they had early in their D1A time, they had Dante Culpepper. They went to the Fiesta Bowl with Blake Bortles, my man, and he's the man. And so, between that and their most recent one, they'd had a season with 0 wins, granted, but they have had somewhat been able to kind of, have a level of success.
Yeah, they have an impressive student fan base. I don't know if you saw that recently on the game this last week. It was 2 weeks ago when they hosted Stanford.
That school's attendance, like the enrollment, is huge. That's a huge school.
And that's why, to compare it to Boise State, that's not apples to apples. You're right. I mean, their enrollment is, at least twice, right?
Oh, yeah, at least twice.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Of what Boise State's is.
Absolutely.
So, but still, they have, they're talking prior to the Stanford game, they turn away about 5,000 students per game, because of the demand. Like, you have to get up, get early, you wait in line, and they turn, which is kind of sad to me in college football that
you turn away students.
Yeah, especially when there were some open seats. Like, there were definitely some sections of open seats, and I get that if somebody has a ticket, you just can't be like, well, they're not here and it's 10 minutes to go, so you get their seat. But that's they have the what do they call it, the bounce house?
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, I think it's called the bounce house.
Before we move on, do you know what were you around yesterday when I was telling you about their first ever mascot?
No, wasn't.
Look it up. It's called the Citronaut.
The Citronaut?
Yeah, if anybody wants to look it up.
Okay.
It is, so originally when the school opened up, it was called like Florida Technical University or something like that. And its first ever mascot was something called a Citronaut. Okay. And it looks like this little dude who's like an orange, but he has like the great Gazoo head, because it's kind of like paying homage to, like, the air and space.
He looks like he's from George Jets, the Jetsons.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the Great Gazoo wasn't he from the Flintstones? But same
no,
thing.
You're right. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Dave, trivia master of the universe.
You can only hear.
I was too busy Googling.
You're the only one that can see me, you big dum-dum. But that thing is hilarious. Anyway. The Citronaut.
Yeah, I can't even. That's a heck of a.
They need to bring that baby back for a game.
Well, either way, I think that it's going to be awesome. It's going to be exciting until 2021, though. Man, is there going to be a lot of buildup, because these student fan bases or UCF, Boise State Twitter, I would say it's pretty hostile. This week, though, after the announcement, though, it was weird. There was like kind of like all of a sudden, like, oh, well, I do respect them. They are pretty good.
I wish I could remember whose tweet it was, so my apologies. But someone did have a tweet that was like Boise State fans, like, UCF fans are so annoying. Why don't they shut up?
Yeah.
They need to knock this off. UCF fans are like, oh, we're the hot new team, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. They announced the series. Nothing but great respect for each other. Can't wait for the game.
You know what? I think it was Andrew. Does that sound right?
Andrew Faraci?
Yep. I think it was him.
I think I pronounced his name right. But anyway.
I wasn't going to try to tackle
it was pretty funny.
I'm pretty sure it was him, though.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
Yeah.
So props to Andrew. That was pretty funny.
I enjoyed it. I got a good giggle, and I didn't see it till like last night, and I was like, oh, that's pretty funny.
That's a pretty good one.
Moving along though,
it was for a bye week, we talk about how fun it is and how like not lazy it is, but like stories that I've been working on for a while. I can finish them this week. There's been news this week with the scheduling. And what you were going to go with?
What was I going to go with? How do you know? How'd you just know? How'd you just assume that you knew what I was going to go with?
Zeke Noah.
Yeah.
Boise State's middle linebacker, out for the year. Broken wrist and torn ACL.
Yeah. So we found this out yesterday too, or at least the news was confirmed yesterday too. A lot. Yeah, you're right. The first 2 days of the bye, we've gotten significant news. And for Zeke, I don't know if he's a household name yet. Like if you're a Boise State fan, you probably have a pretty good idea of who we're talking about right now. But I don't think he's had enough playing time to the point where he's a household name. I think he would have gotten there this year.
Yeah. But
once again, Boise State loses their leading tackler, which is just like a really awkward place to be in. Ever since Leighton Vander Esch left, which it really wasn't that long ago, but Boise State has lost their leading tackler a number of times. And what I mean by that is the leading tackler goes down, and then you'll have a new leading tackler, and then he goes down.
It's 3 times in the last calendar year, because they played at Wyoming September 29th last year.
Okay.
And that's when Pierce had his lacerated spleen.
And he was the leading tackler at the time.
And then 6 weeks later, Riley Wimpy's leading tackler and tears his ACL against BYU. And then now Zeke Noah against the Air Force, which in my head, I remembered him kind of going out like in the fourth quarter. It was halfway through the third quarter, and he had 10 tackles at that point.
He was having a great game, a career high 10 tackles.
Yeah, and I know against Air Force, usually that it kind of lends itself to that. I remember like the first time they played, and I kind of mentioned it on here, Byron Hout had like 20-something, and he was the middle guy back then. But right there showed what I've always thought about Zeke Noah, and I thought that he fits so great as a middle linebacker. Boise State does a great job of finding these guys in the middle who aren't necessarily the biggest dudes. I mean, he's like 5'11", 240.
They're compact. They can move around a little bit.
Yeah, and they can fill those run gaps. And he always, like, whenever I saw him, and then even like, when he played last season after Riley got hurt and that weak side, you're just like, God, that guy looks like a middle linebacker. Because that weak side spot has been like Leighton, Riley Wimpy, Ben Weaver, those sorts of guys.
Yeah.
A little more rangy.
Yeah.
And so you're just like, God, I was like, it's in my head. That's
what this meant, by the way. When not like I'm hugging people or whatever, sticking your arms, that kind of more long, rangy.
Yeah. And so when you considered what was coming back last year, it was like, well, how does Zeke Noah fit into this team? Tyson Maeva gets the boot, and you just go, oh my God, Zeke Noah's going to be the middle linebacker. He told us in the spring, and told me in the spring, I asked him straight up. He was, I don't plan on moving. Well, Riley was still coming back from an injury at that point. So
I felt like we were Ralphie off the Christmas Story with the decoder pin, though, and then you get to the end, it says, drink more Ovaltine. And it was like, you go through all this stuff, and he's like, no. And then you get to the end, and you like get through the decoder, and it says,
starting middle linebacker?
Starting middle linebacker. Like, that's what we thought it was.
We thought so. Exactly. That's a great point. I don't know if I can do it better. And he just kind of fit it so well. And I remember early on in the Florida State game, it was kind of like he missed a tackle or two, and you're kind of like, ugh. But ever since then, he's been stout. He's been really solid there.
In his defense, we weren't the only ones saying, ugh, against Florida State.
A lot of other people didn't look great in that game. It wasn't just him. And I thought he filled that really well. And when you consider what's behind him, it's a little interesting, because I weirdly asked Brian Harsin on Thursday last week about their linebacker depth, especially because they were playing Air Force. And he kind of was like, we don't have a lot of numbers there right now. And then he mentioned like, it's good that we have DJ Schramm and Phil Mills back.
Yeah.
Well, they haven't played.
Well, yeah, and Phil Mills is kind of Phil Mills' name has been brought up a number of times, and he just hasn't had an opportunity yet. So I think it's good that his name has we've heard coaches talk about him, specifically Coach Harsin, because I think it says that he's trending in the right direction, and he needs opportunity. He's probably a guy that gets opportunity now.
He might have it now. And so Benton Wickersham obviously would be the most, well, he will be the starting middle linebacker now. And he's proven himself more than capable. But also, him and Riley Wimpy are the only two guys in the whole team, in the whole linebacker unit who have at least 20 tackles in their career.
Right.
So there's just a lot of guys who are maybe inexperienced or unproven. Who knows? Maybe they'll be fine. But that's now a position where when you lose Noah, it's just kind of like, Wow, that's a void.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Not only do you lose Noah, but you lose your backup because your backup becomes your starter. So now who's your backup? You follow me?
Right. Yeah, I follow you. No, I follow you.
And so now depth is really going to start to be tested at that specific position, which is a very physical position.
Yeah.
I will say it's a good thing Air Force is out of the way, because now maybe you will be dealing with more space than physical in a box.
That's fair. That's
brute force.
And they're not playing the San Diego States of the world and stuff like that.
Fresno State, same deal. Kind of a more physical team that likes to run the ball in a similar manner to kind of similar to San Diego State, because they've started to open things up a little bit. But yeah, maybe that's good. I don't know. Yeah. Time will tell of who's going to be the guy that really wants to step in and fill that role. Feel bad for Zeke. Second big injury of his collegiate career. Great kid. Whenever we get a chance to catch up with him, and I know it's limited time, but man, he seems like a good kid.
Yeah.
Every Thanksgiving, he's up there singing with Sonatane Louie at the volunteer
Cathedral
event
Rockies.
the Boise State football team does. So that's sad that they're not gonna have him available.
Yeah, it seemed like the guys on the team really liked him, and actually
he's kind of a quiet kid too. Totally plays his role. Like, you got all these personalities, and he's just kind of a quiet kid.
He's quiet, but he's kind of that like scary quiet. Mm-hmm. Like when you're at home, and like if your dog goes in the other room, and you're like, oh, it's too quiet. He's that way because he's so quiet.
He's ripping up a toilet paper roll again.
Yeah, he's so quiet, and then you're like, what do you like about middle linebacker? And he's like, I like to hit people. And you're like, okay. Yeah. You know what I mean? That's what he's like.
I will say I do remember that. Our first couple interviews with him, thinking, I was like, he seems just so quiet. And then he was like, great though. Like, he would give us a few things.
Yeah, he's a pretty good quote.
Yeah. Boise State will have to figure out a way to replace him. I think we do talk about that Air Force game though. And Boise State played a really tough Air Force team, about as tough as they've ever played Air Force. And after the game, you had both Louie and Coach Harsin, raving about that Falcons team, saying that's probably the best Falcons team that we've ever played. I know that offensive line is probably about as big as an offensive line as Air Force has ever had.
Definitely.
And they were experienced, and they were tough and physical. And I know that Boise State, there are games that, we're sitting in the post-game press conference, Dave, and you can see just kind of like the tone in their voice, the reaction. There's times where they beat a team by 40, and you could tell like, we weren't like super happy with our performance. But then there's games that are closer, and they sit there, and you can tell that there's a sense of relief. And I think that happened after that Air Force game. I mean, they beat them by double digits. Don't get me wrong. I mean, they took care of business, but you could tell that they're pretty proud of the effort that they put together against the Falcons.
Yeah. And definitely the best Air Force team they played. I mean, considering the game they played the week before, right? Mm-hmm. Kidding. I'm the worst, but yeah, that was a good Air Force team.
For those of you that don't remember, they beat Colorado the week before. Okay,
true.
Continue, Dave.
But and like Hammond got dinged up a little bit in that game.
Yeah.
So that probably helped Boise State a little bit, but even like that third down stop that where Noah got hurt, when they had Isaiah Sanders in there, they were down, inside, Boise State territory, inside like the 30. So they moved the ball decently, even without Hammond. Not quite as the same passing threat, but that was a really good Air Force team. And like, it was 10-10 at halftime. Even going into the fourth quarter, it was a 7-point game. Yep. And it was kind of like, all right, it's going to come down to the end. And then all of a sudden, Boise State just made the right plays. Fourth down stop. Get a turnover with Canio, and then they converted on both of those into points, which you have to do against a team like that. And Boise State did, and you give them credit for it.
Right. Another thing that I think was huge in that game, and like if you look at the box score, it's not a number that's going to jump out at you at all. But we talked about it on the pregame show last week. We talked about it on Jay and Dave's Sports Bar last week when we talk about the red zone and the fact that Air Force has scored every single time. They've tripped down inside the 20 against Boise State since the Broncos have been in the conference. So they're 31 for 31 now. But a big thing was limiting them to 3. And they did that twice. And I think you go back and you look at the moments in the game and when they did that, Boise State had a 10-7 lead with a couple minutes to go right before halftime. And Air Force is moving the ball. The Broncos get a stop inside the red zone. They limit them to 3. And instead of Air Force feeling good about themselves, leading 14-7 or 14-10 at halftime, it's a tied ball game, 10-10. I think you feel better if you're Boise State at that point, opening the second half, right? Air Force drives down. Boise State again limits them to a field goal to make it 13-10 at that point in time. If you score a touchdown there and you go up 17-10, there's so much game left. But I really do think like your counterpunch becomes more effective when you can take the lead versus maybe just tie the game and hope to get another stop so you can then get a lead. And so that's what happened. Air Force kicked the field goal. Boise State countered with a touchdown. And so all of a sudden Boise State's up 4 versus having to be down 7 and maybe tied or something like that. I know they're big ifs, but I really do feel like those were impactful moments in that game where there was some momentum that Boise State was able to grab, subtle momentum that they were able to grab by limiting Air Force to 3 inside the red zone when they were scoring touchdowns at an 80% clip when they cracked the 20.
When I think Louis said after the game, 16 tackles, by the way, which is crazy for
a defensive tackle.
Yeah, and he but he kind of did talk about. I think he mentioned a little bit was not necessarily. It's something about like minimizing points.
Yeah.
Right.
And they did that.
So whether it was like we said the fourth down stop or the turnovers, but also maybe a field goal instead of a touchdown. They kind of mentioned it. It's like it's not the most like.
Yay.
Yeah, every time, yeah, exactly.
It's not a pick, it's not a turnover, it's none of that. But it's not a free and out. They are significant moments when it comes to the scoreboard, and that's what I mean. When you get down inside the red zone, okay. It also made me kind of devalue the 31 for 31 against a team like Air Force, who's so good when they get inside the red zone. Again, look at that touchdown rate. And in the past, it's been over 60. This last game, it was 33, and you want to be around 70. And so the fact that Boise State was able to, again, limit points. You can't always count on creating turnovers. You can't always be like, they missed a kick, we got lucky. But you can do your best to limit them to 3 when they get down in there. And for the most part, Boise State did more often than not.
Yep.
I think those were significant moments.
I agree, and that's why I think whenever your school, whether it's Boise State or whoever, beats Air Force, or really most academy teams, because Navy's usually pretty good. I think Army's really good. I think no one ever comes away with it like celebrating necessarily dominated. Or if they did dominate, they only won by 2 touchdowns or something like that. You know what I mean? Kind of like you were saying it's just it's the little victories that add up to the victory, and that's kind of what they did. And so you don't ever walk away from that game. I don't think anyone really walks away from those games coming out of it going like, yep, this team's totally fine. They don't have any problems. It's like all those teams just chip away at you. They chip away at your psyche. They chip away at you physically. That's the point of that offense, though. Right, that is the point of that. And so we always talk about those battles within against Air Force, and man, they add up one way or another. They add up, and those are the things that I really think it came down to. I know that in the past, explosive plays have hurt Boise State. They were outstanding. I mean, no real there was
big
one longer than 20-something.
Yeah,
right?
But I mean, you'll take that against Air Force.
Sure.
You go back, and I was looking this up actually this last weekend, and I was just thinking of how the first quarter and half of the season was like, oh man, it was tough for Boise State. In the first 31 defensive snaps of the season, Boise State allowed 5 30-yard plays. So, about once every 5 snaps, you're allowing a 30-yard play. In the 201 plays since then, they've only allowed 3 30-yard plays. So, as opposed to allowing a 30-yard play once every 6 snaps, they're now doing it once every 67 snaps. They are literally 10 times better at limiting these big, explosive, game-changing plays over the last, 2.5 games than they were the first. Well, I guess more than that. The first 3.5 games than they were the first half a game.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah,
that's pretty amazing. I mean, again, I wrote it. That was kind of the thing I took away from when I wrote my game story was just adjustments. And I know it's a word that people love to throw out, and sometimes they think it magically happens at halftime. Doesn't always. Sometimes it happens toward the end of the first half or something. But the way that Boise State adjusted a lot of different things in that game, was impressive. I think that was a really, really good sign for them.
I think it is like a cliche thing you can say. I think we joked around about it last week. Like when a team just doesn't necessarily score a lot of points in a game, then like an automatic reaction could be like, oh, they're just not creative, so vanilla on offense, and really it's like there are 3 guys wide open and they dropped balls. That's what it was. Like, so when you talk about adjustments, it could be cliche, but man, I look at this team and you're like, this team can make adjustments on the defensive side of the ball, particularly. Yeah,
the defense for sure, and handling just the frankly, not using the sledgehammer that is Air Force, right? They're just going to try to bludgeon you, and Boise State was able to withstand it. And Louis talked about how he said right before that fourth down stop, Riley Wimpy and David Moa were like, they've been killing us on the inside run. We're not going to let it happen. It's fourth down. This is the time where we have to show that we can stop it, and they did. There's adjustments there. There's adjustments to, like you said, not giving up touchdowns. There was adjustments on offense to let Bachmeier not get hit as much. He went 7 for 8 in the second half.
Yep.
They started to run the ball a little better in the second half. Just the way that they kind of were able in the flow of the game just improve was, I think, a good sign. And like, I know a lot of people want to be critical of the coaches, and sometimes it's right, but I think especially in a game like that, those adjustments really did stand out to me.
I think a big thing is also once Boise State's able to feel comfortable for a lead. Comfortable with a lead. That was never the case necessarily at Florida State. I do think that you can maybe put Bachmeier in harm's way less.
Sure.
Again, we talked about it last week, how he really is stretching the field a lot more this year. Well, it isn't
more
like
than he ever has been before.
Yeah, more than he ever has before. The production of 20+ yard gains is up this year. And in order to get those, you have to hold on to the ball a little bit longer. And so I do think that there is somewhat of Hank holding on to the ball a little bit, offensive line, with some protection issues at times. But it still kind of pains me to always say, like, oh, it's offensive line. Like, it's not always the offensive line. Another thing that I think that they're asking the starting five to protect a little bit more this year, to where last year they were keeping the tight end a little bit more at times. And so you can't, everybody wants to see production out of the tight ends. Well, if you want to see production out of the tight ends, that means you have to send him out into routes. And if you send him out into routes, guess what? At times you will have one less guy to help pick up protection and block. So
I think that's a really good point.
So you might have your quarterback susceptible to some more hits. So, there's a give and take with everything here.
Yes, and also, too, 90% of fans aren't going to blame their hotshot true freshman quarterback.
Exactly.
They see what's on the line.
You tweet out anything about Hank right now, and it just blows up on Twitter.
Yeah.
It doesn't even matter.
And I do think the O-line in these cases deserve, if you're going to assign most of the blame, it probably should be to them. But again, it's a team effort. Like, Hank maybe is holding it for a little too long on some of those. Maybe a running back. Maybe a running back was supposed to come in and chip a guy off the edge, but he missed the assignment. You don't know 100% for sure, and so it's easy. It's easy to blame the O-line, and it's easy to not blame the quarterback. It is. But you got to go a little bit into that.
Everybody can be better.
Everybody can be better.
But at what they're doing right now, there also has been some payoff. And I do think that you see this trend with some very successful quarterbacks, even at the NFL level. And you have people being critical that Deshaun Watson and Carson Wentz are taking too many hits, but those are also two MVP caliber quarterbacks that are tough. They hang in there. They deliver big plays. I don't know. I just kind of, I'm not comparing Hank, ability-wise to those two right now, but I do think there is a little bit of a comparison there where he's willing to hang in there and deliver on some of these big plays, these big throws. The touchdown pass to C.T. Thomas, he's willing to hang in there to the last second. C.T. comes not just open, but wide open by maybe Hank hanging onto the ball a little bit longer. And instead of, throwing into a tighter window, he's just throwing to an area and letting C.T. go make a play.
Right.
And I don't know. I just feel like I always see that, and I'm not trying to defend anybody here, but it's just such like a cliche thing. Speaking of cliches, to always be like offensive line. I do think that there is a little bit more to it. And again, I go back to even like Bates. Like, when it comes to pass plays, I don't know the exact number, but like from stuff I've gathered, he's running routes about 10% more of the time this year than he was last year in terms of staying into pass block. So there is like a number there that shows he is running more or out in routes more this year than he was last year, which effectively takes away another pass protector.
That is true. But then, of course, I think some of the same people would then be like, well, then they just need to utilize him better when they do put him out on pass plays. But, you know what I mean?
Right. I know. You can't ever win. But another thing too is like we've seen this team run the ball pretty well. Yeah. But I don't think we've seen them run the ball like they had when they had Jay Ajayi and Jeremy McNichols and Alexander Madison. Like they did at Florida State
for most of the game.
Yeah, but in the 3 games since, like, okay, you start to do that against UNLV and San Jose States of the world. there's going to be way more, respect paid towards the ground game, and some pressure is going to be taken off Hank and stuff like that. So, and it still is relatively early in the season, and there will be adjustments made and all that stuff.
And if the O-line is going to get all the grief, then what if they end up having a good finish to the season?
Yeah.
Will that make up for the slow start if they're still undefeated, which they are? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a fair question.
It is a fair question, yeah. While you pull out this little surprise here, Dave, I'll bring up this because we wanted to touch on this. The Idaho football team picks up a big victory. Not many people gave them much of a chance to knock off 11th-ranked Eastern Washington, despite the fact that game was being played at the Kibbe Dome. And the score will tell you that the Vandals won by 8, but they dominated that thing from start to finish. It was not an 8-point ball game. It wasn't even close. And Mason Petrino looked good. I know that Coach Petrino, his father was pretty fired up after the game, saying, I know nobody outside of these halls believed in us and all that. And I got to say, man, like I'm sorry. After the Central Washington game a couple weeks ago, I doubted them. I woke up a little bit last week when they only lost by 5 at Wyoming. Yeah. I was like, okay. Mm-hmm. And then they proved that that's the team they are against Eastern Washington, not the team that, snuck by a D2 school out of Central Washington. So good on him, good on Coach Petrino and the Vandals. And now they're not knocking on the door of the top 25, but they're getting there. Yeah, they're getting there.
And you said Eastern was 11th ranked?
They were. Yeah.
And it was a non-conference game, even though they're both Big Sky teams, which is hilarious because I'm sure Idaho would love to have that conference win now. But it was just kind of funny, like you said, kind of the stuff with the coach's son being the quarterback. I mean, again, I went to a school where that was the case, where Dan Hawkins had his son as the quarterback, and
even McIntyre had his boy as the wide receiver.
Yeah, that's true. and everyone loved him because he was usually pretty clutch. But the thing is, with it's a no-win situation. That's why it's so hard. Because if you ask anybody around Boulder, they like Cody Hawkins. They don't like Dan Hawkins because he played his son, and maybe they thought, Tyler Hansen should have been in or whoever. And I think I wonder about that with some of the fans about he's just going to always go to his son. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's kind of a no-win situation, even if he wins a big game like that.
Yeah.
The next time that they struggle a little bit, it's why don't they put in Colton Richardson or whoever? And it's just a no-win situation unless you can go in and dominate people. And then if he doesn't play his son and they have a bad record, then that's bad too. That's what I mean.
It's a very tough situation to balance and win. It is. But the Vandals, they're moving in the right direction. The College of Idaho football team, it's now been over a year since they lost a football game. They had a bye this past week. Now they go back out on the road, but they're ranked 11th in the country. It's the highest they've ever been ranked. So things are really looking good for Coach Morosky and the Yote football team. One thing that we talk about all these football programs having so much success. Well, there was one local team that, I'm not going to lie, struggled to wrap up the regular season there, Dave.
Oh. The local sports team?
The Idaho Metropolitans.
Jay and I are donning before the season ends. Yeah. It's a tribute to our friends from the Mets.
By the way, Randall Post, this was not my idea. I didn't know that I was going to get to wear your jersey. So I do it with a tremendous amount of respect and honor.
I think I'm wearing the Clark Corbin 40.
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, we finished our softball season this year, and
it fits good under a button-up. It fits really good when you wear a button-up under it.
Yeah,
so that's good.
So for all the YouTube people, before I put these away for the season,
retire them. Dave washes them every week, so that's why.
I'm like the equipment manager. I'm the Dale Holstein.
Did you wash this one?
No, I didn't wash these yet.
Okay, I didn't think so.
No, these are just from the game on Monday. But anyway.
Yeah, we didn't win our regular season finale. Kind of sucked. I went 1 for 3. It was my worst game of the year.
It was fun.
Yeah.
This was like the best fall ever for me. Getting you out there. That was awesome.
I had a great time. I only hope that the free agent contract offer comes in of will you come back and play next spring? Because I would like to. So just throw that out. I mean, no, I wanted to hold out and wait for a better offer.
I'm betting 4th every game.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't want to play next to Southern in the outfield.
Yeah. It was a blast. We actually played together in the outfield. It was a blast. Yeah. So I look forward to next season now. And we look forward to the bye week. And we hope that everybody gets to enjoy college football without any or too much stress if you're a Boise State fan this week, because they're not playing. So I do feel like it's kind of back-to-back bye weeks for us, because I don't know since I've been here if I've actually got to watch college football
two Saturdays
two Saturdays in a row, game day to whenever that Hawaii game wraps up or whatever the late game is.
The degenerate special.
Yeah. I got to cap off the day some way, I guess, right? But yeah, it's been fun. Boise State back in action next week at UNLV, and until then, we'll be back in action next Wednesday here on Jay and Dave's Sports Bar. Thanks for listening, everybody.